Okay. Let's make some paintings today. Let me see. Hello everybody, welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we're going to be making a painting about a person I think is very, very interesting, very special young woman. Her name is Alyssa Carson, and her goal is to become the first person to stand on the surface of the planet Mars. Oh, crazy, right? And you'd probably think this is just like some random person with some random dream, but she's actually taken some concrete steps to get there. She's pretty much halfway there. She just needs to jump on a rocket to take her there, because she's jumped over every single hoop that you can imagine NASA has set forth for anybody to go into outer space. So she's done all of these steps. She's got certified to go into outer space, which I didn't even realize you had to do, but I guess I've been watching a few of her. She's done a couple of TED Talks, maybe more than I know of, and she's all over social media and all sorts of news stories. We're going to take a look at them in a second here. So let me see, where should we start? I got lots of stuff I want to show, and we really want to get into painting, but let's kind of jump to a few things I want to show right off the top, one of which is the Facebook group. So there's a private Facebook group just for people who are taking these classes, and this is now the 4th class or course that I've been teaching. And there's a link right down below. Click on that link, join the private group, and you can also upload your version of today's painting to the Facebook group. And then every 2-3 weeks or so, I do a session where we look at all the work that hundreds of you have been producing out there. Another thing that you can find is a link to a Dropbox. And in that Dropbox, you'll see these are the episodes we've already filmed. And if you click on this here, you will open up to another folder which has got 3 images in it. There's 2 JPEGs and 1 PDF. And if you open them up, you will see this. So this and this. There's 2 versions of the tracing. One is a PDF and one is the JPEG, just depending on your printing preferences. So here's an image that she posted to her Instagram, and it also incidentally is the cover to her book. If you want to order her book, we'll look at it really quickly here, but there's a couple of links for Amazon.com and .ca which you can purchase her book at, and it comes in an e-reader version as well. And then the outline, which we're going to trace onto a canvas here in just a couple of seconds. So, maybe before we do that, let's just kind of take a quick, here's the Facebook page just for the event page. Where do we want to go up to? So the reason why we're painting this person, who is a remarkable person anyway, but on March 8th, which is 4 days from now, is International Women's Day. And as I was putting together these courses, I was thinking, what should we do for that? And my wife was immediately, oh, I've got somebody that would be perfect. Alyssa Carson is someone whose goals align a lot like mine, which we're going to find out next Thursday, because I have some dreams about going into space myself. So it would be perfect for International Women's Day, and then we can kind of, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We're ahead of the news, but that might give us a little bit of a chance for those of you that are a little bit slower to do these classes to catch up in time for next week. Anyway, this is the post that she put on her Instagram, and I searched high and low to find out who the photographer was on here, because I like to credit the photographers whenever we make a painting based on a photograph, but I wasn't able to find that. I don't know, it might have been a parent or sibling or grandfather, grandma, aunt, uncle who took the photograph on her behalf. But you can also, if we click on NASA Blueberry, is her Blueberry actually is her call sign. That's kind of how she would be referred to. If you think about like Top Gun and what is it, Viper, and what are some of the Iceman? I can't remember. It's been a while. So I don't know when was Top Gun out. Anyway, this is her Instagram feed. She's she's studying all of the important things that she needs to do in order to get into outer space. She seems like a really cool person. Here's her website, so you can click on, then again, there's tons of links, probably more links than I put before in a video, so you can find all of these links to her her social media and the web on here. Now here's where I've taken the title for today's episode. So she's in training to be the first human. I think she's now 19. So she's still very, very young. And we'll come back to this image in a little bit because... Oh, it won't let me zoom in on it. I think on my computer here, so we'll take a look at it. But you can see this is a version of that same photograph, which has been has a few filters on it to simplify it, and that's something that's going to be very important to making today's painting. As mentioned, here's her book. Here's you can order it from Amazon.ca, and here's Amazon.com. I haven't had a chance to read her book yet because this is kind of all pretty new. Just kind of stumbled on her the other day, and so here's her Twitter, and she's in the news all over the place. So here's news from India talking about her achievement. Here's her on the same image that we're going to paint on the cover of a magazine. Here's a French website. Here's a Spanish, is that Spanish website? And here's one of her TED Talks. As I said, she's got a couple of them. Okay. So, I thought it was kind of we want to just take a quick look. And she's on Wikipedia. I forgot to even show her Wikipedia page. So, let's... we want to transfer this image onto the canvas. So, in order to do that, we... So on the Dropbox, you can print out that image, right? It looks just like this. Print it out, and then we can use some carbon paper to transfer that image onto the canvas. Now this is the sheet of carbon paper I've been using a bunch, and you can kind of see it's been worn pretty well through. My desire is to do all the tracing before class even begins, but I am, these days, a full-time daddy, stay-at-home daddy, and I'm trying to make art at the same time as being a daddy, and I think some of you know what it's like to be the primary caretaker for your child, and getting anything done is tricky, to say the least. Okay, so to get this image on here, I printed it out on just a regular piece of paper. And then let's line it up. If anything, so, I could put it right in the middle. I'm actually going to put mine a little bit closer down to the bottom, which will kind of give a little bit more room on this, and also towards the side, so that there's a little bit more room on this side for her eyes to be looking out into the expansiveness of space. You could imagine if I put this right here, and let's say this was the edge of the painting, then we'd have all of this empty space in behind her, which wouldn't be bad, but we would, as viewers, look at it a little bit differently, because we might be like, oh, well, that's weird that there's all that space in behind her. What is that supposed to mean? What is the artist trying to tell us? Are they trying to say there's something in behind her that she should, is there a Martian that's crawling around on the surface of Mars that's going to eat her or something? So, because that's kind of, we know a lot more about how to read images than we think. And we do a lot of decision making about and reading into images And so artists have to be aware of those kind of things so that when we put together pictures, we are conveying the idea that we want to get across. Okay, so we're going to quickly trace over these lines. Right, maybe I'll start maybe down here so just that we can see it, that it's working. The dotted lines are just lines where there's shadows. And so you can trace them, but maybe not quite as hard, so that they, because we won't be making lines out of them. They're more like guidelines for us to help understand where things are going to go on the painting when we start painting it. All right, so there's the first little bit. It doesn't matter if this moves, but I'm taping it down because I don't want this to move, right? So I can take this, I can even flip it upside down if I want. Just making sure it goes all the way. Okay, cool. So, okay. And, you know, some of these lines here, we may or may not, depending on how you paint it, you may not need all of this detail, or you may not be able to paint all this detail. So, and depending on, you know, your pencil and how sharp it is, some of this detail may not come through at all anyway. But don't worry about all of that. Don't worry about the level of detail in your tracing. Because we're probably going to have to, just for the sake of both time and the limitations of the size of canvas, we may have to omit a few small details in the structure of this helmet. And I always think when I'm doing this kind of thing, what are the most important lines? Like, do we need all of the lines, or can the viewer make sense of this image with a few less lines? Right, so we'll kind of come to that as we get there. I'm just going to see, right, so it's coming through here. I mean, you could take the same image and you could put somebody else's face inside of here as well when you're making this painting. Right, you could easily just swap it out with your I don't know, your goldfish, or your grandma, or your dog, or your cat, all of which would be very, very funny. So, as an artist, you have creative freedom to explore as you wish. Like some of these details, like in the eyelashes, I'm not going to even bother tracing those eyelashes on there, just because it's just not going to be real. I'm going to paint over that area pretty quickly anyway. And like in these eyebrows here, I'm not going to draw all those lines. These are just kind of to help me understand where things are going to go on this picture. And same thing with like her hairline there. Okay. So let's just take another look before... Oh, we got this little line here. Let's take a look and see how we're doing. All right, so you can see there's a lot of detail missing in the eyes and stuff, but we don't really need those details, so I'm not worried about that. I'm missing a little bit in here. Just, let me see, that might be helpful to get that. Oh, and you can see right up here, the top of there was no graphite paper for that, so let's just fix that. Okay, boom. And look at this, there's lots of comments in the chat there, so I'll get to that in a second. And you can also see, you know, I'm using the particular kind of graphite paper that is double-sided, right? So you can see that not only do I have this version, but now I've got the reverse version on the other side, right? So if you wanted, you could then take this and do another one, and I don't know, let's say have this, do another painting where she's looking this way, and you could have them side by side or something like that. Lots of options. So, and as I said before, you can use, instead of just tossing this, you could color it in with colored pencils. You could put watercolor on it. You could give it to a little child in your family. They could color it with crayons. Right, so I think these, I save these because I save everything, but if you wanted, you could keep it. Okay, so now let's take a look at this image, and the first thing we want to do is think about like colors, and the first colors we want to lay down. So I like this, you know, orangey red background. So we're going to put an orange background in here, and we're going to put some, obviously, some big solid reds. But the overall thing I'm always thinking is there one or two colors that I can put down over top of the whole picture to begin with as my underpainting, as my primary wash? And over the time, we have also done some paintings where we might do, you know, let's say one color here and then another color here. Whenever I'm doing this kind of thing, I usually try to think of, is there maximum 3 colors that I might want to lay down, or 3, you know, puzzle pieces. In this case, and I haven't done any of this thinking beforehand, so this is just me imagining it in, just examining this painting right off the bat. What I would probably go for is something a little bit kind of like a skin tone, like a lighter brown, but maybe with a little bit of more yellowish, right? So that we can try to get a little bit of this highlight in here radiating through the entire painting, including on her clothes and on the helmet itself. That would be kind of my instinct, because it'll also work pretty well with all the other reds that we're going to apply over top of it. So let's get our paint out and start mixing some colors on here. As usual, all my paints can fit inside of a shoebox. Everything that I'll need to make this painting is in here. And we'll talk about some of this stuff once we get to there. But I think the only things we're going to be using today are slow dry medium and maybe some glazing fluid. I was trying to think if we want to even use any glazing today, because one of the things that I want to think about today is we want to try to break down the face, or really the entire composition, into like shapes, and then we'll get more and more refined the more and more time we have, or we can keep it relatively simple. So whereas glazing, we're often doing a lot of blending to get nice smooth transitions of colors. So we'll see as we go here. So we've got our the palette, and I'll put down some color on here. I did go and buy some new paint the other day, so I'll be able to finally retire my warm yellow. I think this might be the last bit that I can squeeze out onto to my palette here. And so how many, we've done like 55, almost 60 paintings or so with these paints. And so that's pretty good, right? That tube of paint costs maybe $15, and we've got 6 of them, not including white and black. So ultimately, but again, I say this all the time, but you know, that's like what, $100, $120 or so worth of art materials, and that's lasted us for almost 6 months here, and 50 paintings. That's the cheapest hobby that I can think of. Okay. Well, let's put a little bit of white on here, and we'll save the black for a few minutes. So to get that glowing yellow color, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay down a cool yellow, a cool orangey yellow, kind of like a golden yellow, because we are going to paint cool orange over the background, and then we're going to paint warm colors over top of it. So I'm not too concerned about the cold color underneath pushing everything back, because we are going to paint warmer colors over top of it. But I really want a glowing look to come out of this painting, right? I want it to like radiate light. So let's start here on with some cool yellow. We'll get some of that on our brush. Just smoosh it into the bristles a bit. Okay, and then I'm going to take some of the cold red. Way too much of it. I took too much of it. That's okay. I'll just spread it out a little bit. In fact, I think that's just way, way, way too much. So this is the color I want to put on top of the color I'm mixing right now. So let's just try that again. Where's my brushes? You ever feel like sometimes your brushes just take a walk on and disappear on their own? I'm sure I had another brush that size, but alas, no. Okay, so let's we'll do this all over again. Get much of that. So some yellow. We'll get a little bit of water on here. So this is my cool yellow. And now let's just do this again with just a little dab. I just got way too excited, right? Okay, so you can see just barely changing it. Just barely changing. And it's almost like now that color has become a little bit warmer. And you're like, how is that possible that taking two colors, a cool red and a cool yellow, and add them together, and it goes from being a bright, cold orange to a little bit more of a warm yellow, right? And that's because they're crossing over the neutral core here, right? So colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel, when we add them together, they dull out a little bit, and they kind of go almost towards the opposite. So in this case, going from very, very cold, they're not really getting, I guess they're kind of getting warmer, or just less cold, right? Okay, so I've got that color on my brush. Let's move our palette over here, making sure everything's okay, right? So let's brush this color on. And notice I just go right over my pencil lines. And this paint is going to kind of seal in all the pencil lines, so I don't have to worry about them smudging later on. We just want to avoid doing too much kind of scrubbing as I'm applying the paint, because otherwise I will smudge those lines. But And you can, well, you used to, back in the 90s, early 2000s, before computers were so as dominant as they were, artists would use carbon paper all the time. And I remember when I went to art school in New York, and I went to an art supply store. You could go and get carbon paper. You could get like a HB carbon paper, or a 2B carbon paper, or a 6B, just like you can with pencils. And with a 6B carbon paper or graphite paper, it behaves a lot like a 6B pencil, which means it's going to smudge very, very easily. Okay, so I'm pushing my luck with all of these lines going back and forth over top of these pencil marks. I think that might be good enough. Okay. So let me just take a look at the chat here. I see May says, I'm a little apprehensive about doing another portrait. We're going to go a little bit gently here, so we won't, we're going to try to simplify this image. So we're not going to be, I'm going to try to, maybe I'll make it a goal today to not do any blending of paint, right? Because when we're trying to blend the paint like we did with the Vermeer girl with the pearl earring one, right? We used glazing fluid to do that. And we can get some really nice soft transitions on the face. But it's tricky to do, right? Whereas I think what we're going to try to do today is we're going to paint in a much more impressionist kind of fashion, where we're going to just sort of put maybe more solid blocks of color today. That'll be my goal here. And I think that may make things a little bit easier for some people who struggle a little bit when we're painting portraits. But having said that, when I see the work you guys do, I'm pretty impressed, right? So I am trying to challenge you guys. We're trying to get better and better each time we do this, and that requires us going outside of our comfort zone a little bit. Oh, look, my NASA mug. Huh. Deborah says, I'm also apprehensive about another portrait. The good thing is that she has a big helmet on. Heidi says, I'm good. I'm not alone being apprehensive about another portrait. Deborah says, Alyssa's going to be 20 years old soon. I looked into her bio. And Shelley says, I'm excited that my husband was able to print the picture so I could make this painting with everyone. I miss the comments watching it later. That's interesting. I noticed that sometimes I can see the comments from the chat there, and then sometimes I can't. I don't know why. What happens with the live stream chat sort of disappears. That's why I try to read some of this so that those of you that are watching it later on can actually, you have an idea what other people are saying while we're making the painting. Deborah says, I have decided to paint this with a different angle. She has had a life of privilege, although her mom died when she was young. She went to very good schools. So I'm curious how you would include some of those things into your picture. Deborah says, also excellent support from her dad, which is awesome. Ace says, is Charmaine in the class? Deborah says, I have already reversed her portrait in Photoshop. And Heidi says, would golden liquid be good to use for us at this stage? I'm assuming you mean like golden liquid paint or liquid acrylics, which are like fluid acrylic. Is that what you're talking about, adding like a liquid into as a medium into the paint? I'm not sure, but I have can I reach here? Let me see this. This here is a golden fluid acrylic, And these are, you would get this kind of thing if you wanted to put it into, what is it, like an air compressor, like to do, not spray paint, but you know, those little spray guns. I've used this kind of stuff because I do put it into kind of like a hairspray, and you can put this kind of thing in there and spray. You can see I did this for the ties that I made for my wedding. I made custom ties for everything. Anyway, so this is still a little bit wet. I'm going to blow dry it. Oh, okay. So Heidi, you were using the fluid acrylic. I probably, like, fluid acrylic is generally a little bit more expensive and comes in these smaller bottles. I would use fluid acrylic, would be some of my last lines that I would put on a painting. I think it might be a little bit, you'd be kind of wasting it to put it down on your canvas as one of your first washes. Because the reason you would want to use fluid acrylics, beyond putting it in a spray bottle or air compressor, is really to get like really fine lines. So, you know, you could use fluid acrylics, let's say, for these details if you wanted. That would work really well. Like, let's say you're going to outline this with black lines or white lines or blue lines like this, right? That would be a good use for fluid acrylics. But putting it on as your base layer, I mean, you could certainly do it. But this, you know, this bottle, I think is maybe, I can't remember how much this would have been, like maybe 15, 20 bucks at least, I would say. Might even have been more. It's been I don't usually buy them, so I can't really remember, but you would probably use, I mean, maybe a quarter of this on here, and so that would be a very expensive base layer on your painting when we're going to cover it completely anyway. But good question, for sure. And, you know, paint companies are always trying to, you know, they're like fast food companies or something. They're always trying to think of, like, what kind of new thing can we come up that people didn't realize they needed yet? Right? Let's make a fluid acrylic. We'll make heavy body acrylics. We'll make soft body acrylics. I mean, and they are useful, but they're not anything that we can't already kind of create on our own with the existing materials we already have. Okay. So, as mentioned previously, remember I mixed this color right off the top, and then I decided, it's a little too orangey, right? We can use this color for our background. Right, and let's just even take a look at them side by side, and we can see that this is pretty darn close to that orange that's in this painting, right, or the photograph. So that's a cool yellow, cool red. Right, so we haven't used anything but cool yellow and cool red so far on this entire painting. So what we're going to do next is we want to make sure this painting is nice and dry, and I think I'm also going to need to mix a little bit more paint here. So I'm going to put down a bunch of yellow, because we can always darken the picture, but it's much harder to lighten a picture afterwards. So let's mix this. Right, so right now we've got a very a brighter orange than what we had here, right? So we've brightened it up. We saw how much red we put in here. I've already got some red here, so let's see. You can see how much that's going to change things. We're going to need a little bit more. I think about this as like making a soup or something, and you're adding salt to the soup. All right. I've learned, because I like making soup. I love soup. It's my favorite thing to eat. And I have made the mistake of just being like, I'm like the chef from Sesame Street, and just being like, da, 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 and just add a whole bunch of salt because I think I know what I'm doing, and then go, whoa, that is almost inedible. There's way too much salt in there. So let's see where we're at. So a little bit. All right, so I'm taking my time, especially when you're making like a bigger batch of a color. Right? You don't want to just make it too dark too quickly, and then you've got this color that is kind of useless now. I'm going to add a little more. I think that's pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is also add some slow dry medium. Right? So I'm going to add some of the slow dry medium in here. Oh, maybe a little too much. I put a little too much in there, but that's okay. It's just going to slow the drying time down. This way I can maybe add a little bit more red as I do this into the corners, and we'll do. I did say we're not going to do any blending here, but maybe I'm just going to do a little blending towards the edges, just so that we don't just have one flat color all the way around here. Okay, enough mixing. Let's get to painting, Michael. Okay. So, spread this all out. And it's going to be up to each one of you as you paint this, like, can I tolerate some of that yellow coming through or not? Is that a deal breaker? If you don't like this kind of brushy look, then you can do another coat of this, which maybe we'll do that. We'll see here. Yeah, we might end up doing that. In fact, I'm going to paint in over top of her mask in this area here. I'm also not too concerned about getting paint over any of these other details here. We're going to paint other colors in all of this. The main thing is just getting paint at least up to the lines. It doesn't matter if we paint over the lines, but don't be afraid of that line. Go right up to and over it if you want. as I said, you know, I kind of like this as it is, but it won't hurt to add a little bit more to it. So let's let this dry. I'm going to use the blow dryer to speed that process up. And then we'll do this again. What I'm doing here, just so you know, what I'm looking for is I just want to try to avoid any big ridges of paint. So that's why I often just smooth it down with my fingers, because I often get little ridges at the edges, and I don't want... It's not a big problem, but it can make it, especially when I'm doing details later, if I'm having to try to do a straight line over a bumpy textured surface, it can drive me nuts. So okay, not completely dry. Dry enough for the touch. Ideally, before I put another layer of paint on, I want this to be dry, bone dry, so that, because if the paint's not fully dry and I start brushing over top of it, I can get away with a little bit of brushing, but if I keep brushing in the same place, I'm going to start scrubbing the paint, this exact layer, right off. So the more that I can stall for time and delay here. You know, also in retrospect, that first layer probably would have been a good idea not to put slow dry medium in there because it's slowing down the drying time. But I didn't really know how well it was going to react to that existing yellow and cover it. So, you know, sometimes you don't know this until it actually happens, and then you're like, oh, that's why. I'm going to make t-shirts like, you know, learn what not to do. Okay, so I'm just taking the same color that we just used, right, that's got the slow dry medium in it. I'm going to brush this same color over top of the orange that we already have down here. And you can see it's now covering, it's much more opaque than that first layer. All right, so I'm going to brush this in quickly. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I've got a lot, and the second layer, you don't need quite as much. We're just sort of so if you're looking at, like, I looked at it like, oh, if this is my first layer, I wouldn't have enough paint, but the second layer doesn't have quite as much work to do with covering and hiding color, so. Now, I think what I'm going to do is try a little bit of blending. So I'm going to take a little bit of this red, and in fact, I'm going to put a little bit of slow dry medium on here just to facilitate this blending process, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of this red. Let's say we'll put a bit in just a few places, and I'm just going to blend that out. So kind of like a vignette. Kind of will add a little bit of red to some of these corners. And I'm not even really using my blending brush. I'm just kind of Now I'm pushing my luck because some of this is already drying a bit. It's hard to really see with the studio lights on exactly how it's turning out. A lot of reflections in here. So you can see how there's a little bit of that paint is kind of scrubbing it a bit off with my brush, which means that first layer is getting tacky and it's drying. So anyway, not too bad. I just wanted a little bit of a subtle effect of a slightly darker color in the mix. I could let it dry and come back and add a little bit more. Yeah. Don't want to do that? I don't know. I think I'm just going to start working on the painting. I was like, sometimes I like to fiddle with my backgrounds too much. So again, I just want to make sure that the helmet there, I think. There we go. I think we've got it all covered. Okay. Just going to clean this brush. Okay. So I'll blow dry this a little bit, and then we'll talk about the next colors we're going to add. Okay, so these things are still a little bit tacky. Okay. I do want to. If I was doing this on my own, what I would do is add maybe a little bit more red and try to just give a little bit more of some variety to this background color, right? A little bit more darker colors, especially maybe down in this area towards the ground. Maybe, but in the interest of continuing to move forward, up and away, let's think about our next step here. So I think, just looking at this image, we've got this helmet is like a very cool blue, cold, blue. So we could paint a little bit of that white in there, cold blue white. And then her clothes. And this would be kind of a dark brown in here. And that's white. I could also see us doing, using very similar colors that are in here also on her face a little bit. So, I think, let me see. Let's do, oh, see, that's still very wet. That's the slow dry medium. Even with the hairdryer, this is still wet down here. So where, I think I'll paint some of this red down here because I don't want to paint some white up here and get some of that paint in there, so that needs to dry a little bit. Her face, we could actually do a little bit on her face. Maybe that's what we'll do. Okay, so to get her face, what we're going to do, in fact, you might even be helpful to take a look at what the actual colors are here. So, if you recall, there's a couple of websites that I've included in, I think it's under like how to find or match colors. So let's upload a file here. Come on. Okay, let's go into the Dropbox. So I'll upload this original image in here. Okay, now let's just take a look at the color of her skin, because if we painted her skin as it normally is, it could look really nice, but it might look a little strange given the composition, right? When we add this little color picker, it's showing us, look at the actual color this is, right? That's almost like a green, right? So if we take this, we copy and paste that little hex number, and we post it in here, whoa, look where we are. We're like right in the neutral core, right? So our primary color is like a brown, right? We've got this orange in here, and we've added the blue on the opposite side. Really, oh, sorry, you can't even see this. What am I doing here? Let's start this again. Okay, okay, so I uploaded this image onto this website, and if we just click anywhere on her face, take a look at what's happening down here and how these numbers, the number doesn't really matter, but just look at this color right around here, right? All of these colors on her face are almost all of them blues, or not blues, but like brownish greens, right? The only place we get even close to, like, let's say a Caucasian skin tone, if there's any at all, whoops, we had a little bit like right here, right on her nose, the highlight on her nose, right? So almost everything is this color. So let's just copy that and we'll paste it into this other website. And then look, so here we have what would be like an orange. Orange would be like right up here between yellow and red. Right, here's your cool yellow. Here's your warm yellow side by side. And then as we get closer to the neutral core, because we add more and more blue to it, it's getting more and more brown and gray. Right, let's just, what was that color again? Let's paste it back in here. Right, so we are in the neutral core, and then we've got a little bit of maybe even black and gray added to it. So I think that's really important just to kind of think about when we're working on this painting, is that her skin color is not just a kind of a brown, but it's a greenish brown. And that there's two ways you can think about this. Is like, what? Like, oh my goodness, now I'm gonna, like, how do I paint? Like, I have enough difficulty painting, like, you know, somebody's skin when they're illuminated, quote unquote, correctly, right? Let's say you're trying to paint my skin right here. It's a whole other thing to try to paint somebody's skin when there's a different kind of light being cast onto their body. So, that's one, like, oh no, now I'm really up the creek. What am I going to do? The other way to look at this is that this gives us a lot more freedom when we're painting this painting, that we can kind of be quite expressive with our color, right? Rather than trying to kind of match these kind of peachy brown colors, right? We can use greens and blues and purples to make this painting. And if you go into it thinking of it that way, I think you may hopefully feel like you've got a little bit more freedom to play around here. So I'm going to get some paint brushes out for doing this next stage. Just looking, I'm mostly going to be using some of my smallest brushes here. And like I said, I think when I'm painting this face now, I'm going to really try to just put down solid blocks of color and do as very little blending as possible for pretty much the rest of this painting. So you can kind of get an idea of how this would work. So let's get this view, let's change it to this. Okay. So to get this kind of greenish brown color, what we're going to do is we're still going to mix a warm brown. We're going to use warm yellow and warm red and warm blue for this color. And use just a little bit larger brush to do some of this mixing. Okay, this brushes. Some of these paintbrushes are on their last legs. So let's take some of the yellow, we'll spread that out. And let's take some of the red, let's put some here. Okay, so now we've got an orange, right? You can see a different kind of than this, right? Because that previous one we were using cool yellow and cool red. Now we're using warm red and warm yellow. Very, very similar. But if you, this one to me looks like, it's almost like as if it's got a little bit of white in there. It's just a little bit duller because it's crossing right through the neutral core here. Anyway, we've got that color. Let's add some of the warm blue to it. And we'll just do it in pieces here. Okay, so we got this brown. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of white into the color. So we've got kind of a darker brown here. So if I wasn't painting this as a, if I was just trying to paint this, her face just regularly, this would be a pretty good color for the darker shades of her face, maybe, right? And then we would just maybe use more white and yellow to kind of brighten it up, right? But we're not going to do that. I'm going to add more blue to this paint color. Okay. So we're going to kind of use this color a lot, and we're going to add more blue, more yellow back and forth to it, maybe even little bits of cool blue into that mixture as we go along, and white. Probably very little red is going to go back into this color unless we need to kind of remake this color again because we're running low on it. But for the most part, we're going to be just adding blue and yellow to the brown so that we have a greenish brown color. Okay. So, and I'm just going to add a little bit of slow dry medium in here, like just a little bit, just to slow the drying process down. It gives me a little bit more freedom in case I make a mistake. Because it's wet a little bit longer, I can wipe that paint away if it gets to that. Okay, so I've got this darker brown. Now, so this is our kind of the color that we're going to start with. And now let's just take a quick look and see where, if anywhere, we can add this brown onto her face. So I see, and this might be different for everybody, and also depending on the color that you've just mixed, but I see a little bit of that kind of up in her forehead area here. Her hair, even though it is kind of like a brown, I think is going to be like much closer to like a really dark blue, I think is what we'll put up here. All right, so this is kind of like a shadow on her face. All right, and even a little bit under her lip down here. Anywhere else? We could put a bit of this on her eyebrows. They're going to get darker anyway, but it might be helpful for some of you just to lay in some of these facial features now so they don't get too lost. And don't worry about like right now it looks like she's got a soul patch down here. Like she's right out of a 90s movie, right? She looks a lot more masculine now with that, but don't worry. We'll come around. In fact, I just want to wipe that away. I want to have a bit more of this yellow coming through on that edge, so I'm going to do that instead. So we'll have a bit of that halo of... I even just licked that with my... licked my thumb and just wiped it in here to... Let's just do that again. Okay. And again, you know, her eyebrow looks a little bit thicker than that, but we're going to be painting things over top of all of this. All right, so don't worry about that. Okay, so that's pretty good with that initial brown. So now, let's just kind of build on this. Let's take this same blue. I'm going to just put a bunch over here, and we're going to kind of darken it, make it a little bit more bluish. So now we've got a much darker brown. It's like verging on blue. And then we can kind of now take another look. Where could this color go? It looks to me like we could put this down here on her cheek. And even on her nose like that. We can apply the same thing under her lip. Okay. Okay. So let's keep going here. So I'm now going to take, so we've got some of the darkest colors laid out here. I'm now going to add some white to this mixture. We'll add a little blue in here. So you can see this is almost like a gray right now, right? It's like a blue, very, like, it looks to me almost like a like gray. And then we can just sit here and think, okay, where should we paint this gray? And we're going to paint some blue back into there. Okay, let's continue. Let's add, I'm going to even take some more white and just put it to the side. And let's just make it like a lot of blue. Let's take even more blue. Maybe even more white. Okay. Maybe I'll zoom in fact, on this so that... Right, see, I'm just sort of blocking in these big areas of color. Right, and I can add a little bit more. Let's add a little bit of yellow in here. Because we want it to be a little bit more green, I think. And let's add more white in there too. We'll keep brightening it up a bit. Okay. I think it definitely needed to be more and more green, but you know, sometimes even me, like it's you know, you're like, you look at it and you don't think it quite is green enough. So let's get some more of this. Basically, we'll just mix this green here. So this is just, again, we're just using warm colors at the moment, right? So warm yellow and warm blue. Try to keep like this, a bit of that bright yellow as a kind of shining on her face there. Okay, and maybe I'm just going to do another layer here with just mostly blue. I'm going to come back over this area and let's just make it much more blue. We'll go from brown to blue. Right, so we've kind of lost the face a little bit. We're going to bring that back out here in a second. We're just trying to kind of match some of these colors a little bit. That's my main goal at this point. See, I'm just like slowly getting closer and closer to the colors in the photo, adding more. It's getting greener and greener and greener. And I know that doing this kind of thing is kind of frustrating and scary for people, because now we've kind of almost lost the face completely, right? But I always think, like, don't worry about making it, you know, as much as we really want it to look like her. I'm more interested in just us practicing about how to actually paint and than getting a likeness, because this is just, the likeness is sort of like your last step of the learning process. Lighter on her forehead, so let's add some just white into that mixture. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take some of this white that was a little bit dirty. I've been dipping my brush in it to mix some colors. Just going to take a bit of that. I'm going to add this into her eyes. Okay. And now I'm going to just use my same brush. I'm not going to change it. I'm going to take some of this warm red. Take a little bit of cool red just because it's got a little bit more of a pinkish quality anyway. Just mix a bit of that together. Let's take a bit of white. Just going to take this color and put it on her lips as a bit of like a placeholder. In fact, I'll do both the top and the bottom lips, even though the top lip is going to go much darker. Okay. right? So it's kind of looks like we've got just these big blocky shapes here. But this is important. It's important to just kind of start playing around with colors to kind of get to a place like that. Lori asks, which canvas board warps the least out of the 3 listed? One did better, but I can't remember which one. Of all of them, I'm trying to remember. The one that I like, I think these, the Army Supply ones, U.S. Art Supply, they feels very military, seem to work pretty well. I mean, any of them I think are going to work much better than the cheap ones at the dollar store, even though these are only $1 more. So they're $2, but... Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go the opposite direction at this point. I'm going to now take some much darker color and I'm going to start adding in some of the details on her face. I'm not going to go all the way. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to take some cool blue, cool red, or sorry, cool blue and warm blue. I'm mixing them together. It's going to create a very, very dark color. And then let's just take a little bit of cool yellow. Doesn't really matter, because we just want something that can be pretty dark. Okay, so mixing a bunch of those colors, cool blue, warm blue, cool red. It could be warm red, it could be, but it's basically I'm just mixing both of the blues, one red and one yellow together to get a much darker color. Now I don't want to use black just yet. Black is like a really dark, heavy color. And I don't want to go there just yet. I'm also going to put a little bit of slow dry medium. Not much, but let's stir that up. Okay. So let's come in here. I could have done this first. Maybe for some of you it might have been easier to start this way. So I'm doing her eyebrow again. Okay. Let's do the eyebrow on this side again. And I want to get nice sharp point, as sharp as a point as I can, really. Okay. Basically like laying in, I'm going to put a little dot there for a highlight on her eye a little bit later, but I'm not quite there yet, so. Let's just put in her pupil, or her iris here. We'll do the pupil later on with black. Okay. Go up. So this is like a little fold of that top eyelid. This might have been a bit of a big eye. We can always adjust this. You know what, I'm going to take this, I was going to take the dark blue and paint her bottom lip, but to get that, I'm going to take some of the cool red and mix a little bit of a purple here with the, so cool red and warm blue, kind of a little bit darker. Okay. And just going to extend that a little bit and kind of pop up on the edge, just gives it a little bit more of a smile as opposed to a frown. Okay. Now what I think I might do, I'm just going to take this dark blue that we've mixed here, and I'm going to put this inside her helmet in here. So now we're going to define the shape of the face. And I'm going to leave a little yellow edge . Use a little bit smaller brush. Oops, too much paint. Again, it doesn't really look like her at this stage. And you know what? Maybe it won't look like her when we're all done. Does that really, really, really matter? Doesn't to me. But that's just my philosophy of painting. Well, that's going to have to dry for a few minutes. We are going to do more shaping of the eyes. Right, we're still working on it. You have to kind of like when we're especially when we're doing portraits. It's not about getting the likeness immediately. It's a process. We're gonna kind of leave the face for a little bit, and then we're gonna paint around it, and we're gonna come back. Because I know that probably a lot of you are in this. You're like, I don't know. It doesn't look like her. I lost the whole face. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna stop the painting. I suck at painting, right? So we're gonna continue. We're just gonna let that dry. We've taken a few little attempts at it, and then let's paint the helmet, and we're gonna come back to this here. I often use the analogy of painting as being like on a roller coaster, and you've probably heard me mention this before, but I think about it all the time, is that there's times when I'm making a painting and I'm just like, wow, it's like everything I do is turning out great. I'm so happy. Wow, I've finally turned a corner in my life, and I've got magic fingers, and I'm just so excited. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh no, what have I done? Oh, it's like crisis. The world is falling apart. And, oh, I don't know what I've done. Oh, I need a new hobby. Maybe I should pick up, I don't know, tennis or violin. What was I thinking of ever trying to make a painting? And then it's like, okay, well, let's just put another 20 minutes in. I'm already so far. It's whatever. So it's like the roller coaster going down, and then 20 minutes, and you're like, whoa. Oh, it's getting better. It's getting better. Oh, my goodness, look, it's kind of, wow. Oh, I've solved it. I'm such a genius. I'm so proud of myself. Wow, I can't wait for everybody to see it. And then you're like, okay. And then, oh, what have I done? Right, so it's like up and down, up and down, up and down. And when you're new to painting, and when you're going really well and then everything plummets, it just feels like the worst feeling on earth, right? But if you go into it and you start recognizing, you know what's interesting is every time I do this, there's those ups and downs. And so you start to kind of anticipate those things happening, and when they happen, or when things are going really well, you start to kind of like, okay, I've been on a pretty good streak here for a little bit. At some point, probably in the next 10 minutes, the bottom's going to fall out, and I'm going to go back down the hill. I just have to hold on until we come back up the other way again. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brown in for her hair, just while I've been working on the face. I forgot to do that, so I'm going to now just scoop up some of this brown, and let's just add a little bit more blue to it. It's almost like this is just a placeholder. A lot of the stuff that I've been doing here, just placeholders, getting paint into the area where it needs to go, and then we will we'll worry about whether it's the right colors and right shapes and all that kind of stuff later on. I mean, I haven't even looked at the computer screen to think about what that color would be for her hair, because I know I'm going to paint something else on it in a little bit anyway, so it's just kind of putting things into the vicinity. Okay, so now let's kind of go back to the photo and think about what we can do next while some of this is drying in the interior. It looks like my background's nice and dry, so I think I could probably do the helmet now. And then we'll kind of work our way down here. Or you know what, maybe I'm going to work on on her body up here first. Just so that when I'm working here, this will be nice and dry in my hands. Okay, so we're going to paint warm reds in here. So I've got my warm red. I think I might just take the warm red right out of the tube, and let's just see where, if we start kind of putting it down here, it looks pretty good. I think on this edge here, we're going to add a little bit of yellow and white into it. But, okay. I'm even going to come up right under here. I know there's going to be a shadow on here in a bit, but won't hurt to make that darker now. this area is going to be darker as well, but so I can just lay in a little bit of color. You know, I could imagine some people saying, like, why, the way that you're painting right now, why not just quickly paint this all red and then paint your, and that might work. I mean, if I was in a really big hurry, I would probably do that. But what I'm sort of just doing right now, even though this may end up as one big red block, is it's like I'm kind of practicing, I'm looking closer at these shadows and just thinking, okay, this will be a solid color. It's like it's like a dress rehearsal for laying in some color. And so I'm just kind of blocking out some shapes. Okay. Just trying to like understand a little bit of the structure. So next thing I'm going to do, I like this purple that we have down here. So let's take some of the warm blue and the cold red, and we'll just mix that together so we get kind of a purplish color. This could be kind of a nice dark color. And let's just see here how this works. All right, it's got a big wrinkle on our jacket there. Okay. Again, it doesn't matter if it's too dark or too bright or anything. Great thing with acrylics is we can modify everything, change it over and over and over again as much as we like. Okay. So I'm just now going to kind of come back to my warm red. And let's, yeah, let's take, I'm just going to take this warm red and come into the blue and just mix it in here. Now this is going to go a little bit more brownish. Just going over some of these darker areas. Okay. Now I'm just going to come back to the warm red, and now I'm just mixed my paintbrush in there. So it's already, now it's a bit of a dirtier, darker warm red anyway. And paint this into some of these darker areas. Still kind of wet, so I can brush some of this around a little bit like oil painting. So you can see my brush is just, but in the kind of the process that I just use, I just let my paintbrush get dirty, and that does a pretty good job of just darkening things anyway. And then as some of that dirty paint starts to kind of, you know, a lot of it leaves the brush. The colors is sort of is lightening up on its own. Oops. I gather some people are maybe thinking they would rather not do portraits for a little bit. Okay, so maybe I'll keep that in mind as we go forward. Maybe we'll take a portrait break. Okay, so I'm just put a little more warm red right out of the tube onto my palette. And now I'm gonna, I'm gonna just wipe the paint off onto a rag. That brush a little bit. And I'm just going to take this warm red, and I got a little bit of warm yellow here. Let's just put this aside. We'll mix that a bit together. Now it is similar color to the background, right? Because they are both orange. Don't worry about that yet. We're still plugging away here. Just putting a few little highlights, brushing it into this mixture. Take a little bit of white now. That's a little bit too much, but it's okay. Okay, cool. So I need to pick up the pace a bit here. Okay. So I'm gonna let that dry, and we'll come back and add to this as needed. But maybe you like how kind of rough it is a little bit. I'm just gonna go back in here with a little bit of red, just pure red into there. Okay, I guess there was another fold there that I missed, so I'm just gonna brush that in while the paint is still really wet. Okay, cool. Got a new viewer there. Nice to see you. T. McGee. Interesting name there. Okay, so now let's do the helmet. Again, we're going to come back and we're going to, if we want to touch any of this up, we can touch any of that stuff up. It's just we're laying down. This is almost like our underpaintings, the underpainting that we're working on, and then we can fine tune everything. So we'll now get the helmet. Now remember we looked at just to match colors, just out of curiosity. Let's say we come back here and take a look at this helmet. Look at the color down here, right? Like there's pretty much, there's no white in here at all, right? It's all cool blues. So let's just copy this, and then let's paste it in this other link. And again, these links are in the video description below. So I paste that in here, and now look what it's telling me. This is where really the color is located. This is the opposite color. That's what this is right here, right? But there is red in it, so it's kind of like a brown again. And what is it? A warm blue or a cold blue? It's a cold blue. This is our cold blue zone right in here. Cold blue, all cold blues. Here's our warm blues, right? They get warmer and they get more purpley, right? Towards magenta. So we were somewhere around here, I believe, right? Let's try that again. Yeah, so here we are. We've got a cold blue and a little bit of, it's towards the neutral core, so it's a grayish, right? So let's mix a cold blue. That back there. Okay, so I'm going to let's get a little bit of black in here to make a gray. Barely need any black. I'll have that tube of black paint for the next 20 years. Okay, so here let's take some white. Let's take a little bit of black. Right? Barely any black on there and it went gray, right? Now let's take some cool blue. And if we look at the screen, this cool blue that I have here, it's pretty close. If anything, it could go a little bit more blue. But let's start applying some of this paint on here. Maybe I want, I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush just for this. Okay, so take my gray. I'm going to mix a little bit more here. Okay, so I'm just going to mix a little bit more gray. Okay. So let's just take a look here. Okay, paint this in here. That's looking pretty grayish. It's okay. I'm going to lay this down anyway. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of more blue and just brush this blue right into this color here. Again, I'm not too concerned with getting any kind of highlights so-called correct or anything. This is sort of where I'm laying down is like my local color. I can brighten it up as we go. All right, let's put a little bit of white on my brush. Put a lot of this color all over here. Okay. That's a little bit too much blue. Okay. Getting there, even though it doesn't quite look like it, but we're doing it. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to take some white. All right, I'm going to just take this white with my brush just as it is. And now I'm going to just kind of go back over a bunch of these areas. And just brighten things up a bit. And like I said, I'm going to try to like not blend here. So I'm just going to try to create shapes with this white on here. Okay. That's feeling good. I know it probably doesn't look like it, but I'm feeling good about it. same color inside here. Okay. So again, we're going to do another layer of white over top of some of this. I just want to get that base layer in there. And let's now put the gray in for the, I guess, I don't know what they would be called, just those just metallic parts. So I need some more white. Brush, just wipe a bit off. Okay. And then I'm just going to put it pretty much over everything here. I'm gonna paint over all of this stuff, and I'm gonna clean it up later on. I'm going to leave a little bit of this for those reflections that are on there. I can add them later, but if I miss them, I can always... There's nothing I can't do later if I miss it, so... I'm just going to put a bit of this gray inside there like that. Okay. Now I'm going to darken that gray, and rather than just use more and more black, I'm going to take some of this kind of dark blue that we were using. Where did we use that? On the face? Yeah. I'm going to use a little bit of that, so that, because anything like this is reflective, right? So it's reflecting the colors around it. So we don't want to just use black. We want to use some of the colors that's potentially reflecting. So here, I'm going to put this color in. A few places like there. This kind of initial laying down of colors like this is some of my favorite parts of making a painting, because there's a lot of freedom here to play around, and we're going to tighten it up as we go forward here. Probably, you know, I would like to get this done in about the next 45 minutes at the latest, so. But all this stuff is some of the most important things that we're going to do in the painting, is just laying these kind of areas in. Just looking, I kind of, like, I don't really do too much of this anymore, but one of the things that I would be doing is a lot of, like, squinting my eyes. I'd be looking at the photograph and just thinking, like, where's the brightest and the darkest places? That's a little bit of just basically what I'm doing right now. It's like, where are some of the darker areas, and I'm getting progressively darker at the moment. And then slowly, I'm going to go back the other way towards the darker, or the brighter areas, I mean, sorry. So I'm just taking that same color that I've mixed in now, just more and more blue in there. I am going to simplify a lot of this stuff that's on her helmet here. There's just no, I don't think, just both because of our time, but because I don't think it's really, once we know it's a helmet, so we don't need to kind of, I mean, some people are really big into, like, the technical stuff when they're making paintings. If you want to include all that, by all means, go right ahead. And okay. Yeah, let's just darken a bit more. Maybe while I'm here, I'm going to put a few of these kind of well, you know, I'll wait a little bit for the rivets to come in there. Okay. I think I'm also going to, while I'm here and I've got this kind of darker colors, I am going to add a little bit of purple into this gray. So I got cool yellow, or cool red, sorry, and warm blue. I mix those together. Put some white in there and a little bit of gray. because I want a bit of this purpley color in the shadows, because you can see it sort of reflecting off her clothes, right? So here, let's put a bit of slow dry medium just to drop on there. Right, I just mixed this color, put a little drop on there just to help it out. And let's think, where can this go? You know, I'm barely looking at the photograph, really. So if I'm not doing some of these details right, then please forgive me. I'm just motoring ahead here. Because again, I don't really care whether it looks. I get all the technical details of this helmet in. Probably very few people are going to hold this painting and the photographs side by side. Okay. Motoring along here. Sometimes painting a little bit over top of some of the blue I put down earlier, just to kind of add a little complexities to some of those shadowy areas. Anywhere else I can put this color? I think I'm going to put this same purple color kind of right down here in the front. So my brush is starting to kind of get pretty dry, and it's getting a little bit, leaving some of those kind of streaks that I don't, or the texture of the canvas kind of coming through, which I don't particularly I'm not too fond of, but okay. Now I'm going to go the other way. Let's really put some pops of reflections on here. So let's get some white. So just building up some of these little areas of reflection. And you can kind of go back and forth between light and dark, back and forth. Or pushing and pulling, as painters are often will talk about. Okay. Heidi says Arteza brand. Those are the ones that did I say last or the least flexible? I did order some other ones which I saw on Amazon were called like MDF canvas panels, and they were made in India. And they literally have a piece of MDF wood inside of them. The construction of them, I won't say is the best. Where did I put them? They're not the best boards, but they are like the least bendable because they got a thin piece of wood actually inside there. Okay, so I feel like I'm pretty actually happy with the body. I might add a little bit of highlights on the body. The helmet still needs some work. We're still working on that. And the face, we'll do some work on here in a second. Should we do the dome a little bit? Okay. So to do that dome, what we want is, I'm going to use some of this warm red. And I'm going to mix another little bit of, I'm going to take some blue, cold blue, warm blue, make something kind of dark. Okay, so you see a pretty dark color here. And I'm going to put some slow dry medium in there so that I can brush it and potentially blend a little bit out if I want. Okay. Maybe I'm just going to blow dry the canvas because I don't want to get my hand dragging across the surface here. Okay, so I'll take this paint and everything's dry enough. Okay, let's bring this back here. So this is like a dark color, right? Okay. Let's bring this here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take another brush, ideally like a very soft brush. What's my softest brush around here? Okay. And I'm just going to It's not blending very well. whole bunch of slow dry medium back in the mixture to It's a little bit darker than I hoped it would be. So I think I'm just going to wipe some of it off. This is what it's helpful if you've got that slow dry medium on there, because it can slow this process down. You got to get it wet. Let's maybe just start this all over again. Okay, see, if I use a slow dry medium, I can really wipe things away if I'm not happy with them. I'm just going to blow dry that because it's now very wet in that area. Deborah says, wow, she is lovely, Michael. Such an amazing job. I am almost caught up to you. My background will be different, and I can't wait to show you. I would love to see it. I would love to see how your background's turning out. Okay, so let's do this mask again. And there's no shame in, you know, doing it once and doing it again, doing it 3, 4, 5 times. The only thing you just have to keep in mind is if you are scrubbing that paint off, you know, multiple times, it may start to take some of the previous layers of paint off. So you can get away with a few times, but more than that, and you may have a little bit of difficulty. Oops, my big head's in the way. Okay. Let's see if I can blend any of this a little bit. It's a little bit better. We will put a reflection on there afterwards, but we're not quite there yet. Okay. So, you know, I'm going to just leave the mask like that. We could do a little bit more on there, but I think that's fine. So I think what I'm going to do is now start tightening up the details in the face. And that yellow reflections, those are going to be the very, very, very last things I do on this painting. So, oh, and I see Paula gave a donation in the super chat. Thank you, Paula, for that. It's a good reminder that if you want to make a donation, it's very much appreciated. Small or large, any denomination. You know, before each of these classes, I run our daughter down the street to their nannies, and so I basically lose money every one of these episodes because I end up spending, you know, like about $45 every episode to put our daughter for somebody to take care of our daughter so I can teach you guys. So Not that I certainly enjoy this, but there might be a time where especially as our daughter gets older, where she'll just be sitting here working while we're making a painting, which I would love. I love being around our daughter a lot. So, okay, I think let's kind of pick up the pace a bit here. I want to now darken in some of this face and touch up these features. So I'm probably going to be using probably my smallest brushes for most of the rest of today's painting. I've got a lot of the big areas in. I'm pretty happy with the way those turned out. I might change the shape of the helmet here. It looks a little bit flat. And this dome is going to come up there, but all those are little tiny details. So another thing that happens around this time is you can see my palette is like really dirty, and I can imagine some people hate this, right? When it gets so dirty. I love it when it gets like this, because now I can just sort of dip in and choose some of these colors that have all been used in the painting. So if I take something out of here and put it in here, it's not going to be out of place because all these colors have been used in places. So I can just kind of scrub back into some, like I can just, the same color I just put in here, I could put that on her face if I wanted. In fact, let's, will it be exactly the right color? Probably not, but let's just see. Let's take this dark color. It needs some more blue, so I'm just taking some warm blue. I'm going to take a little bit of cold blue, mix those together into a darker color, and then just mix it back into this. Okay. It didn't change at all. What? Okay. So like her hair right now is sort of just gone blue, right? I may darken that a little bit. But I do like these a little bit more colorful shadows. I'm not too concerned if... I can also think, you know, her face has now got this green cast to it. So if her hair is blue, it's not going to be a deal breaker, I don't think. It is a little bit lost in there. I'm just going to darken that. Okay. It's obviously going to get much darker inside her helmet there, so... get a little bit of slow dry medium in here. So I'm painting the same dark color. I put a lot of slow dry medium on my brush. So it's now kind of acting like a bit of a glaze. So I've got almost like a semi-transparent layer of dark color that I'm applying in here. Okay, I was a little heavy-handed with some of that in there. Deborah's probably like, I spoke too soon. I don't know. It's not so lovely anymore. Be careful what you say. Careful what you say to an artist. It was funny. I remember I had this like one friend when I was in art school who, anytime you gave him any compliments whatsoever about his painting, those would be immediately the things that he would paint out. Be like, wow, I love that like color in the bottom right hand corner. And you'd be like, oh, great. And then, you know, you'd come back after dinner and you'd be like, whoa, what happened to that color in the bottom right corner? I like, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't feeling it. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on the highlights on this side, and then we're going to come back to the darker areas because obviously it's gotten quite dark on those eyes. So and on her upper lip also got quite dark. I wonder if it's too late to wash some of that away. So I just pulled some of that back because I went a little bit too much, and then I made a mistake, and I tried to wipe it away, and then everything else needed to be fixed. So, you know, that just happens. It's okay. So that bright highlight, I'm going to take my yellow and white. I know I've got yellow still on here. That's all right. So I'm just going to paint kind of over top of some of those areas. Clean that up just a bit. And I'm going to use this same color just to do that work, these reflections on the metal as well. You don't have to, you know, I'm not even, I don't really care what these bolts and things that are right here are, and if I get them in the right place. The reason why I'm kind of fumbling a little bit here is because as I was looking at it, these lines got too straight and I want them to kind of curve. So I'm widening them out a bit. I'll have to kind of adjust those, make them a little bit darker. Okay. And then on the helmet here. Okay, and then let's put a reflection on the helmet itself. So I'm just going to put okay, let's see if I can just blend a bit of this out a bit, soften that edge. Okay, there's a little bit of orange in here, so I'm just now going to take, I got a little bit of orange left over from here. Let's put that into our color. Let's be kind of a little bit more peachy, that's fine. Not super happy with some of that, but yeah. Okay. Got a reflection. Inside the dome here, this kind of curving. Okay. I'm going to get this yellow here. I'm going to turn into actually like a baby blue, bright baby blue with white and cold blue. I'm going to take this same baby blue with, and then I'm going to go back into her face. And look for places where I can put this really cool blue. Okay. Oops, it's actually not bad at. Kind of like that blue there. Right now I'm just taking a lot more liberties as I go here. Because this is like the blue that's reflecting off the helmet and all that kind of stuff, so. bit too much of that in there, but whatever. Oh, it's hard to tell whether I'm where I am on the roller coaster sometimes. You're like, oh, I don't know. Is this, am I doing really good right now, or am I in the free fall? Yeah. I want a little more of this baby blue. A little more white on there. Too much. I'm going a little bit too far with the blue, but yeah. It's only painting, right? Okay, if I want, I can make that go a little more green here and as I go, but I'm gonna darken in. Actually, you know what? I don't know if do I need to darken that? Yeah, I do need to darken it a bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a dark color again, which is my. Do I have any of that left over? I need a bit more warm blue. Oops, that was my cool blue. I don't need any of that. So I just took some warm blue, cool blue, and a little bit of cool yellow, and I mixed that together to get the inside of. Well, must have been some white on there. Cleaning up the inside of that mask. I just made it a lot more blue because I got blue all over the face, so. Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to also work on her eyebrow a bit. And her nostril. Okay, let's get some purple for her top lip and make that much darker. Okay, now I'm gonna come back to her eyes. I'm gonna take a second to kind of do another quick look. Put some slow dry medium down so that I can get a little bit sharper, more fluid lines. This is, if you have your fluid acrylic, this is times where it works really well in doing these little tiny details. Okay. Got a bit of black on my brush now. Maybe let's zoom in on it. Come on. Come on. There we go. There is that reflection on her eye from the mask, but just because it's there, it doesn't mean I'm going to paint it. I feel like if I paint it, it's going to look a little weird. Not too happy with some of what's been going on here lately. These eyelashes are pretty tricky. I'm just going to let the face sit for a few minutes. Let's just move on and work on something else for a few minutes. I'm going to do a little bit of outlining here on the helmet. Because the other thing, you know, you can sit around and fiddle with parts of your painting, but it might not be the part that you're fiddling with that needs the work. It might be obscuring the fact that there's something else that is a little bit funky, and that is throwing off the whole rest of the painting. So just taking a break from fiddling on one thing to fiddle on something else. Pick up a different fiddle. So, you know, now we start to feel like the payoff from all of that building up of paint from earlier. You know, all these different colors, and it's like, what is the point? It's because they start to kind of create more depth in the painting. When we've got these little layers and areas where a bunch of different colors are there. Right? Not all of that's going to stay there even right now either, but you know, we live in a world full of so much rich color. And that's what I see often in a lot of paintings. Everything looks very flat. I want lots of depth in my paintings, and depth comes from the layering of colors. And so right now I'm using like a really, really dark blue. I've got my warm blue and my cool blue mixed together, and just a tiny little 1 grain of black, basically. So I'm going to now maybe come down, well, let me see, anything else I want to do on her helmet while I'm right here? I guess I got some screws to put in. I won't do these screws yet because I want to define this area here in a minute. Okay. Let's see. Do I want to do the stitching on here? Good question. Maybe I'll just do a little bit more of this in the shadow down here. Blend a bit of that out. Okay. Feeling like a lot of stuff is getting closer and closer to being done here. Oh, come on, I want to get this done in next very quickly. Deborah says, it is shading. It is fine. I have stopped painting just to watch your technique. Mine kind of looks like a cartoon, though. I need to work on it. Now that I'm looking at this, I feel like that was a little bit too, like there's a little wonkiness in this curve, or just much straighter, but let me see. I think I want to put a little bit of yellow. Well, I don't know. Maybe just a tiny bit. Let's just see how what that looks like. Yikes. Okay, so that was a dirty brush. Okay. So we'll just wipe this away. Use a dirty brush for blending. There we go. That's okay. Let's just blend a little bit of that in. I don't even know if I liked what I just did there either. I think it looks better on camera than that part. I think what this just needs is I should have just, after wiping all of this off, is just let it dry. So I'll do, yeah. I'm like, let it dry, and then I'm like, no, I want to paint on it right now. No. I want to get a little bit of white back into the helmet. Oops, that's pretty gray. Heidi says, okay, I gotta go. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you, Heidi. Enjoy the rest of your evening. So, let's get, I got some white. So I got a bit of white here. I'm going to take a little bit of blue. Like you can see, a tiny bit of blue here. And let's take this. let's put a bit of the same color right on here. Clean that back up now that I'm fidgeting in there. So now let's do some of this white and blue in here. So I don't like this hard edge here, so I'm just trying to soften it a bit. Same thing here. Okay, so now I want to darken this area here. I'm gonna get a little bit of the gray on my palette. Let's just see. Here we go. I wasn't looking at the screen for the that shape. Some white. Do I want to put this highlight under there? I don't know if I do. That's a little bit too bright, so let's darken that back down. I might not do that secondary line underneath there. I thought it was kind of nice when this got kind of bright right here, so I'm going to brighten. Okay. I'm probably getting pretty close to wrapping up here. I mean, I could paint on this for a long time, but like that. Too big. Too big of a highlight, so let's try that again. I want to get some highlights, on her lips. That's too much. And we're going to put some blue back. Okay, well, I'm pretty close. So part of me, at this stage, I'm wondering to myself, do I want to go back into here, play around with the face at all? Or am I going to just call it a painting? I mean, hopefully it's already called a painting, but do I want to call it a day? Can I walk away? the one thing that, with acrylic paints, by the, after 3 hours of painting, these paints are pretty chunky. They are whereas if I was painting with oil paints, which is the medium I normally paint with on my own, this palette would be exactly the same as it is now, versus when I first started painting versus tomorrow morning. So the paint would stay exactly as it is, whereas that's the one thing with acrylic painting. You can mix the paint, and it's the perfect consistency for painting with right now. 5 minutes later, it's no longer like that. It's changed a little bit. Okay, so, if I look at the painting right now on its own, I'm actually quite happy with it. As soon as I bring the other one up, I go, well, it's a little bit different. But again, we knew it was going to be different when we began, right? I don't know. I can live with this. Does it look exactly like her? Absolutely not. Not at all. Very little. It kind of looks like a woman with her lips, kind of that I've highlighted. In fact, actually, that lip there, I think, does need to be toned down just a bit. It's a little bit too rosy. So, just going to take some magenta. I do kind of wish that I would, if I was going to spend another 30 minutes on it, what I would do would be to bring back some of the greens, which I painted out maybe about an hour ago. I don't know. Actually, as I look at it, the more satisfied I feel. Again, I'm not concerned with likeness at all. I just want to be able to create something that as a painting that I feel happy with. So let's. I'm going to sign this here, and then I think we'll call it a day. Okay. So my name. Michael Markowsky. And it is March 4th, 2020. Let me see. What is the thumbnail for today's episode? Can I find it? What should we call this? You can call it whatever you want. Alyssa Carson, astronaut, first person on Mars. I am pretty happy with that. Again, if I look at it just like this, I think it's fantastic. If I look at it in comparison to her original image, there's certainly many things in here that I would do differently if I was to spend a little bit more time on it. But I hear my wife running the bath for our daughter, and I usually give our daughter a bath. So, and I don't want to miss that. So, I'm going to call it a day. We've been painting for 3 hours, I guess. A little bit of chatting at the beginning. And I think that's pretty good for that short amount of time to be able to come out with a painting that I wouldn't mind hanging on the wall of my house. Okay, everybody. So thank you very much for joining me and for painting along with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you were to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that little notification bell so you know when the next episodes are coming up. Next week, we are painting a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe. Okay. I lost sound. Okay. Let me just a few things I was just talking about there at the end is when did I lose sound? I guess I was just saying that we are this painting is in celebration of International Women's Day, which takes place on Monday. So before I see you again next, so I think this is a great painting that makes me feel really hopeful for not just women and their place within our culture, Western culture at the very least, but I think just relations between all genders, and I think I have a wife and a young daughter, and I would love it if 15 years from now, when our daughter is a teenager and she's like, did you make a painting of that girl that's on television standing on the Mars. That is so cool. So I guess I just want to give my great encouragement as much as possible to Alyssa, and hope that one day we get to celebrate your achievement and the whole world is behind you. So fingers crossed, hopefully that dream comes true, and that there will be many more women and men who follow in your footsteps. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and when I get this up, I will start again. So, yeah, enjoy. We'll see you guys next week. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. Bye-bye.